Thank you for the opportunity to let me share with you today what God has done for me. My hope is that you will get a glimpse of really who God is, a better glimpse of who He is and what He can do for us and how He wants to have a relationship with us. I was born to an alcoholic mother in Williamson, West Virginia, which is right down the road here in Wayne County. She was unprepared to raise a child, and so I was adopted as an infant and raised by two God-fearing parents. And I thank God for that because things could have been so much different. I was raised in church and came to Jesus at the age of 9 and was baptized. Regular church attendance was a routine part of our family. And I remember services being exciting. There were a lot of shouting and singing and jumping up and down, and they were loud, and there was a lot of crying. At the age of 12, our family moved to Western Kentucky due to my dad's business. He was in the lumber business. And Mom and Dad became very busy. So church became less of a routine part of our lives. I started attending church again in my middle to late teens and redirected my life toward God. I found myself again a part of a church where there were lots of singing and shouting and jumping and crying, and that felt very familiar to me. I was okay with that. It's some place that I'd been before. I began college at the age of 18 years old and graduated with my bachelor's degree in psychology. I continued to attend church on weekends. I started graduate school and was almost immediately introduced to alcohol and drug use. The emotionally based attachment I had to God was so easily uprooted by drug and alcohol use, which quickly became my idol, day and night. After a while, I rarely thought about God. I eventually totally detached myself from church and from God. My drug history escalated to nearly a nightly thing. I had a couple of critical incidences that were close calls. I remember one night after a lot of drinking, me and my friend Lindsay were coming back home. He was driving, he flipped his car 3 times. I was thrown out the window, but managed to only miraculously have a broken collarbone. So all practical purposes, I should really be dead. And you would think that I would realize at that point that I was on the wrong path, but I didn't. I got involved with pills and alcohol combinations, and after a night of partying, I ended up in a blackout. I apparently crawled through every ditch in town. I had mud from my top of my head to the bottom of my feet. I managed miraculously to come back home, and I landed in my front yard, passed out there, and someone threw me in my bed. The next morning I recollected nothing of that experience whatsoever. Finally, and this is a miracle too, if you've ever been in the drug and alcohol using community, one of my alcohol drug using compatriots said, "Jim, you're going to kill yourself." That got my attention because I guess I really didn't want to die. And so I moved to Jacksonville, Florida, where my mom and dad were living at the time. They knew a little bit about what was going on, but they didn't know the whole story and how serious it really was. So I left Kentucky. I left Kentucky and moved to Florida. I went to work in a local mental health center, surprisingly treating people with addictions and mental health problems. You can imagine I wasn't very effective at all. I soon found that Jacksonville too had lots of drugs and alcohol, plenty to go around, and lots of desperate people looking to medicate themselves and fill that void in their lives. It was obvious to me immediately that the geographic cure had not worked, and that I was back in a mess again. I still was far away from God, but He was not far away from me. I had some dangerous encounters in Jacksonville as well, and my use eventually led to me showing up at work intoxicated. Secretary, who I was real angry with at the time, said, "Jim, you smell like alcohol." She said it out loud, so everybody here. So my work intervened and sent me to 28-day treatment, which was effective, and I managed to stay clean for 20 years. I moved to West Virginia in 2009 to take care of my mother on our family farm. And about 6 years after being in West Virginia, during a bout of self-pity and resentment, and hanging around some friends who drank a lot, I relapsed. And I quickly found myself back in the middle of chaos and despair. After a night of partying, someone stole my car, took my car, totaled it, and so work knew about this. It was a very embarrassing situation. I went to counseling and got back on track. Soon after that incident, people mysteriously and suspiciously started showing up in my life. They were all Christian, and they all were in recovery, and they were all linked to each other, which was amazing to me. To look back how God put the puzzle together in order to do His work that He needed to do with me. So as Stephen says, he went to work right away. And through these coincidences, I ended up in a church in Huntington. And guess what? There was lots of singing, loud music, jumping up and down and clapping. I said, wow, I made it back. You know, that's what I felt comfortable with. I thought I'd made it back home. It was all very exciting to me and something that I was familiar with. Over a period of time, I realized I'd landed once again where I'd been before, many years ago, with a superficial relationship with God, all based on feelings. Everything looked good on the surface. I had rich foliage, the flowers were blooming, but God knew I was in a very dangerous place. And again, He went to work right away. It was a matter of time before another shiny object would lure me away. So even though I was enjoying the place I was in, God said, I need to take you somewhere else. So during our geek group studies, God gave me an intrigue about faith and what faith was, because I obviously didn't know. And so I started studying faith and what faith is. And I discovered that faith has nothing to do with feelings at all. You know, feelings are too easy. Faith can be real hard, and God has to teach us how to have faith. So what I learned in my studies about faith is a relationship with God. If you can develop a relationship with the author of faith, you're good. And so, well, at a substance abuse event here in Charleston, many of you know I'm involved in the drug and alcohol industry for the last 35 years. So I was at a substance abuse event, and this guy, Stephen, came up to me. And I was intrigued right away. Maybe it was a big hug. And I already knew Terry Collison, who I had known her for several years. And so I got Stephen's number. We met for coffee, and he told me about the Great Commission, which I'd heard of the Great Commission. I didn't see me having a part in that at all, or having any participation in it. It was just something in the Bible. And so I mentioned to him that, something regularly would be good to meet with some people. And he said, I've got just the thing for you. I'm going to get together with some other guys and we're going to read the Bible and pray and meet weekly. That sounded good to me. So I began D group with he and Bill Rosenberger, some of you may know. And I made a commitment to study the Word for 30 days. Which now has turned out to be over a year. As we know, the Word of God is alive, it's active, it's sharper than a two-edged sword. It penetrates even the dividing of the soul and the spirit, the joints and the marrow. So after three months, I had a strange feeling. I think it was a gift from God. I kept looking at people and saying, gosh, I feel like my feet are just like bolted down to the ground, like my feet are in concrete. This is an odd feeling. I think God was saying, you want a feeling? I'll give you a feeling. It was wonderful. It was great. It was an odd experience, but I think it was clearly God saying, you're going in the right direction, keep going. So I kept going. I remained emotionally laden though. I was joyful about what I was learning and incorporating in my life. And I was telling stories to my D group people, how I'd be running around town, snot flying everywhere, crying going on. And God started to talk to me about where I was at, because I'd been there many times before. Emotions feel good, but they don't have anything hardly to do with our relationship with God at all. So God wasn't finished. He went to work again. And our D group decided to start studying Exodus. Now I'd heard Exodus before. And I saw the movie with Moses on TV when I was younger. I knew it was very dramatic and entertaining. But God had something else in mind. So I began to get a clear picture of who God is. How big and powerful and strong He is, but how He so desperately wants a relationship with His creation. And how much He loves us and wants to be involved in the minute details of our life. That changed my life. When you know God and you know who He is, there's no other road that you can go down. No other road makes any sense whatsoever. So, in my studies about faith, I had a few weeks where I felt like God emotionally stripped me down. There were some days I had no feelings at all, and I said, God, where were you? And He said, I'm right here. Just keep doing what you're doing. Persevere. And I made it through that period of time. I grew stronger. I discovered faith was about a relationship with Him. So looking back on my experience, I sort of compare it to a birthday party. Somebody's throwing you a birthday party and they're making all these plans behind the scenes, and it's a secret to you. So they're getting the gifts, they're getting the invitations, everybody's ready to come, but you got to show up at the party, right? After 40 years, I showed up at the party. And it was wonderful. The gifts are great. They're mine to keep. They're mine to cherish. Relationship, community, healing, real peace and joy. And there's fruit. The fruits of righteousness. It's delicious. It's satisfied. And I don't ever have to worry about being hungry again. So God knew what He was doing right from the beginning, over a period of 4 years. It was all a part of His plan. So I continue on the journey with D groups, and now I'm beginning to invest in the gospel good of others, and looking forward to what God has. That's exciting. It's a little scary, Because I know God doesn't do small things, He does huge things.
Amen.
But He never gives you a task without making the provisions available.
That's right.
So I feel like a tree planted by water in Psalms 1. There's no rock. There's only fertile soil. I feel like my roots grow stronger every day. I still sing. I still holler. I still dance, mostly in my shower. And that's okay. So some takeaways from my testimony are these. A tree without roots cannot grow.
Right.
Till and water your soil daily by the word of God. God's plan is so much higher than ours, and He executes it perfectly and in sync. And when you're tempted to lose patience with someone else, think how patient God has been with you. Thank you.
Keep that going.